Do you ever wonder, what is life really about? Because it goes by really, really fast. And is there a reason for it? Is there a purpose? Today, David has kind of the same question. Join us as we work through Psalm chapter 39. Good morning, welcome to our Psalm series. Glad you're joining us. Today we're going to be working through Psalm chapter 39. This is actually lesson 52, so super fun. We're just kind of making our way through here. So let's talk today about the meaning of life. Because sometimes I think we all wonder that, like, what is life all about? And we know that it goes by really, really fast. And sometimes we look back and say, what was my life all about? One day you have a baby, and now your baby has a baby of their own, and you think, wow, life is kind of like the train behind me. It's like a train on a train track, and the train's eventually going to reach its destination, and so will we. And our destination will be one of two places the Bible actually talks about. So, while we're on earth, before we reach that destination, the question is, what's the point? What's the point of it? Jewish novelist Chaim Potok, in his novel The Chosen, it sold over 3 million copies, and he gave a lecture at Johns Hopkins University one time, and he said he wanted to be a writer all the way from his, the earliest, when he was really young. But when he was ready to go off to college, his mother took him aside and said, I know you want to be a writer, but I have a better idea. Why don't you be a brain surgeon? You'll make a lot of money and you'll keep a lot of people from dying. And he replied to his mom and he said, Mom, I want to be a writer. I don't want to be a brain surgeon. So he returned home from vacation and his mother got him alone again and said, look, I know you want to be a writer, but listen to your mama, okay? Being a brain surgeon, you can help a lot of people and you'll make a lot of money. And again, he replied, Mama, I don't want to be a brain surgeon. I want to be a writer. This kept going on and on every time she would see him. And the pressure for this kid was just amazing from his mother, because she just kept saying, you need to be a brain surgeon. So finally, one time she said, son, you're wasting your life away. And he looked at her and he said this, Mom, he said, I don't want to keep people from dying. I want to show them how to live. And that's what I think today's psalm is about. I think David wants to do that for us. He wants to remind us that life is really, really short. So let's make it count. Let's learn how to live for Jesus. Now this psalm starts out with a name. The name is Jonathan, okay? This would actually be the man that David hired to lead public worship, because remember, most of the psalms that were written were set to music and then played at the temple and as worship to God. So the psalm begins here, for the director of music, for Jonathan, a psalm of David. So that's how we know David actually wrote it. Verse 1 said this, I said, I will watch my eyes and keep my tongue from sin. I will put a muzzle on my mouth as long as the wicked are in my presence. Now, we don't know what this psalm is really about at the moment, or what even brought this on. But I love this about David. He does not want to dishonor God in any way. Because whatever David is going through, and maybe this is one of, like last week we talked about God disciplining him, and it seems like in this psalm as we work through it that David's just kind of tired of it all. And when we get tired of life being really, really difficult, it's easy for us to say to maybe our non-Christian friends, I'm so mad at God. Like, why doesn't he do something? Why doesn't he make this better for me? But David knew if he said something like that to people who didn't believe in God, or maybe were his enemies, they would take it like, well, David doesn't really believe that God can come through. David doesn't really trust his God. And David does not ever want to say anything bad about his God. So David feels bad about what's going on in his life, but what's amazing is that even when he's down, he's very, very careful what he says to people around him, which might be a lesson for us. Verse 2, but when I was silent and still, not even saying anything good, my anguish increased. It seems David is really upset with God for something, but instead of David saying something faith-filled, David just keeps quiet. David could have said something like, yeah, my life kind of sucks right now, but I know God is working. I know God is in control. I know God is trying to teach me something, like faith-filled words. But instead, because he didn't say anything, good or bad, he kind of becomes miserable. Verse 3, it says, my heart grew hot within me, and as I meditated, the fire burned. Then I spoke with my tongue. Show me, O Lord, my life's end and the number of my days. Let me know how fleeting is my life. See, sometimes no matter what we're going through, we need to be reminded of this. Life is fleeting, and we have a number of days God has given to us. What are we going to do with those days? There's a joke about a pilot who announced over the intercom, ladies and gentlemen, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is that we're making excellent time. The bad news is that our navigational systems are malfunctioning. We have no idea where we're going. We're making good time, but we don't know where we're going. And so often I think that depicts our life. Like, yeah, we're running through life and we've got the job and the kids and the soccer games and all those things, but we don't really have an end game to that. We don't really know why we're here, why we're doing these things. What is the point? And if we're wasting our life with just idle living, we start to think like, what am I here for? Is there a purpose? Is it just to what? Do nothing? Party, watch TV, scroll through YouTube or TikTok? Life has to have more meaning than that. It's like when Solomon wrote the book of Ecclesiastes. Think about Solomon. He had everything. Money. He could do anything in the world. He had women, however many he wanted. Building projects. He had a palace. He had theater to make him laugh. And his conclusion in Ecclesiastes 1:2 was this. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. But whatever David is going through, he didn't want to waste his life. And I'm hoping that you don't want to waste yours, because I know I clearly don't want to waste mine, especially for those of us that are followers of Jesus. We're like, God, what can I do on this earth while I'm living here to serve you? What can I do to promote you, to get the gospel out into the world? Like, that should be our heart as followers of Christ. But for David, he's like, I don't want to waste my life. Look at verse 5. He says, you have made my days a mere handbreadth. The span of my years is as nothing before you. Each man's life is but a breath. It reminds me of what James, the brother of Jesus, said in James 4:13. He said, now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to this city or that, spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why, you don't even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You're a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it's the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast and brag. All such boasting is evil. It's this idea that we say that we're followers of Jesus. But remember, we're on the other side of the cross. And life is short. We get that. We see that from the lives of the people in the Bible. But David back then wanted to live for God, and today that's the same with us. He realizes that we don't know what tomorrow holds. Like, we're just a vapor. Like, I can be like, 4 years from now, we're going to go to Israel. I might not be alive in 4 years. I don't know. It's not my decision. God has given me a number of days, and that's very comforting to me. I just went to the heart doctor a couple days ago, and I told this in class, but it's not on video, so I'll tell you. This is me going to the heart doctor. He asks me, have you had any symptoms or what's going on? And I said, well, last year we were on vacation and I thought I was having a heart attack. So we went to the hospital and everything checked out, but we realized that it was like the Lucky Charms cereal that I was eating. And my doctor's looking at me like, what? And I go, yeah. I go, so I changed Lucky Charms and now I eat Cocoa Puffs instead. And he literally says this to me. He goes, how old are you? I guess cereal is just for kids. Okay, there you go. But I realized when I was done talking to him and having a conversation, and we have to do some more testing stuff, but I thought, my life is a vapor. I don't know when I'm going to die, and it doesn't really matter. Because here's what I've learned. To live as Christ, to die as gain. While we're on this earth, our goal should be to live for Christ. And then when it's time to die, we're like, yes, I finally get to go home. But that takes being in the Word, studying the Word, understanding God has a purpose for your life. Like those are the things that really honestly should matter the most, because our life is fleeting. Verse 6, David goes on to say this, man is a mere phantom as he goes to and fro. He bustles about, but only in vain. It's like the Calvin and Hobbes cartoon. Calvin says to Hobbes, he says, God put me on this earth to accomplish a certain number of things. Right now, I'm so far behind, I will never die. And it's like, how many times have we felt like that? All right, that we're so busy, we're so pressed for time that we just can't finish out everything we're supposed to. But David's problem is this. He just said, man is a mere phantom. He goes to and fro. He bustles about, but only in vain. He heaps up wealth, not knowing who will get it. David's like, people are running around trying to make lots of money and trying to build all this on this earth just to leave it to kids or grandkids that they don't even know what their kids or grandkids will do with them. Will they squander it or gamble it away? Like, do drugs? Nobody knows. And this was surprising to David. He's like, why do people not think this through? You're just getting a whole bunch of money so you can give it away and you're going to be dead and you'll never know where your money goes. And it reminded me of this. There was a rich man who was really distressed when he heard that he could take none of his riches to heaven with him. So he pleaded with God one day. He said, God, could you make an exception to this policy? God's like, fine, whatever. Whatever you can fit into a garbage bag, you can bring with you to heaven. So immediately the man thought, gold. This hair, it's driving me nuts, sorry. He thought gold. So he went and he transferred, got money and, bought some gold. And then he died. He brought his bag with him of gold. So he gets to the pearly gates and he has this black garbage bag filled with his gold. And the angels look at him like, what do you have? And he said, well, God told me I could bring this. And the man proudly opened the bag to show them its contents. And the angels were looking at each other in bewilderment because they're like, why would you bring pavement to heaven? Because the streets are paved with gold. Okay? And I love that. But gold is a hot commodity here on earth, but in heaven it's only pavement. But Solomon says this too. He said in Ecclesiastes 2:18, he said, I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And yet who knows whether he will be wise man or a fool, yet he will have control over all the work into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. So all I have to say, there has to be something more to life than just making money and being busy and giving it all to your kids after you die. But look what David says. He says, but now, Lord, what do I look for? Money, fame, fortune? He says, no, my hope is in you. Whatever David is going through, whatever is going on in his life, we see that he's frustrated with his circumstances. He looks around and sees that people are living for nothing that's important. But David says, you know what, God? You know what I have more than what other people have? My hope is in you. Because my money won't make things better. TV won't make my life better. Vacations won't make my life better. Fun for the moment, but not in the long haul. Sports won't make my life any better. Because who wins this year probably won't win next year. But David reminds us that since life is short, our life should be centered and focused on something forever, eternal, like our relationship with Jesus. That's what's eternal. And it was a reminder to me, the importance of what that means, serving him on this earth. Because what we do for him down here is the only thing that's going to matter for all eternity in heaven. But then David takes a turn from life is short to, God, I have sinned. God, I don't want that sin to hurt others in finding you. Look at verse 8. Save me from all my transgressions. Do not make the scorn of fools. Do not make me the scorn of fools. I was silent. I would not open my mouth, for you are the one who has done this. Remove your scourge from me. I am overcome by the blow of your hand. You rebuke and discipline men for their sin. You consume their wealth like a moth. Each man is a breath. Most of David's Psalms that we've been going through lately is all about this heavy hand of God, discipline from God on David's life. Like I said, maybe it's the Bathsheba thing, maybe it's the census thing, whatever it was. Once again, he goes back to God's heavy hand on him. But look at what he says. He says in verse 12, hear my prayer, O Lord. Listen to my cry for help. Be not deaf to my weeping, for I dwell with you as an alien, a stranger, as all my fathers were. And I think David makes a great point that us, especially as followers of Jesus, need to remember. It's like this bumper sticker, this logo that we see right here. Here it is. It's not of this world. And we need to remember, if we're followers of Jesus, we are not of this world. David says, like aliens, foreigners, that's what it should feel like for us, to feel like we're kind of aliens. We're foreigners on this earth. We live on this earth, but we are living in a hostile world. People are hostile to Jesus, hostile to our faith. We actually don't belong here. But while we are here, for this short time while that train's going, through life, we have a job. And our job is to point others to Jesus so that they can get out of this world in a spiritual sense as it is. Because the cool thing is that one day we're going to have new resurrected bodies. And when we have that, we're finally going to feel at home. No longer will we feel like aliens and foreigners. Jesus is coming back. He will restore this earth. It will be beautiful. It will be awesome. We'll have new bodies. Then, finally, we'll feel like we belong. We finally will feel like we're at home. But for now, here this is. We're in it. We're not of it. We live here. We're in the world. But we don't have to be of it, a part of it. We can live above it. We can be like, okay, God, I'm in this world, but how can I be the best witness for you on this earth? Verse 13, he goes on to say, look away from me that I may rejoice again before I depart and am no more. And David ends this psalm like this. God, I sinned. Your hand was heavy upon me. But can you take your hand away from me just for a little while so I can rejoice about you before I die? And when it's all said and done, we see David's heart. David doesn't ever want to hurt God's reputation, even if his life isn't going the way he wants. And I really think that's a great lesson for those of us who, we don't like the turn our life has taken. Maybe you got cancer or death in your family, or pain or divorce, or you got fired, or maybe it's like sin, like David, heavy hand of God. But let's be like David. Let's not walk away from our faith, because Jesus is our only hope. This life can only last a lifetime. And David makes it clear that this life is like a breath or a vapor compared to eternity. So as aliens and foreigners in this world, let's focus on what happens after we die more than what happens here on this earth as we're just traveling through until we get to a day when we will spend eternity with him. I hope that helps you today. Have a really good week.